In this episode, we're going to be talking about women in leadership.
Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business. Maybe you can relate to this. When I was a full-time coach, keep repeating the same things to people over and over and over again, and it got to be kind of draining, and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing anymore. So what I decided to do was record the things that I had to tell clients over and over and over again, and then I packaged those recordings together and sold them as an online course. If you're interested in creating and selling your own online course, head over to thrivinglaunch.com, and I have a free training for you on how to create and make passive income through your own online course. On this episode, we're here with Sarah Kaler. She's an executive leadership coach and a business mentor. And for over 17 years, she has developed business leaders across various industries, working with Fortune 500 companies, female CEOs, scaling them up, and she's been featured on a ton of other places like Fox News. We're so excited to have her here on Thriving Launch.
Welcome to the show, Sarah. Are you ready to launch?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, one thing that I would love to hear from you is it's about women in leadership roles, because as a woman who is a CEO of our company, who I've done a lot to try to build myself up to be seen as an equal, at least an equal to Louise, my partner. It's a struggle. There's a struggle of being able to be seen as an equal to men in a male-dominated space. So I'd love to hear about your views, your take, your experience with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more and more we've got, women CEOs stepping into that role for the first time. I mean, statistically, we have over 1,200 women opening small businesses just in the U.S. today, every day, right? So we've got women in this position, just like you're speaking about, and working with women at the small business level all the way to big billion-dollar companies. This is real. And I think what's most important for women is to think about what you bring to the table. What's in essence, your competitive advantage, right? And not from a sense of competing with the men or competing with your team, but actually what's the value that you bring? What's your point of view? What do you bring to the ability to make a decision that actually brings your company that unique edge, right? That allows you guys to stand out and gives your service, your product truly that edge in the marketplace, right? And without you bringing that point of view and that voice and your talents and your strengths to the table, you're really, truly missing something in the marketplace, because women, frankly, think, behave, lead, and make choices and decisions differently than men do, typically in business and leadership.
Really reminds me a lot of when I was doing job applications, to take my weaknesses and turn them into strengths, and take my strengths and turn them into areas where I'm providing something incredibly unique, and in even taking my weaknesses or differences to a job, and how that allows me to bring something that no one else can. So, for example, I remember applying to my job where I was going to work with Dr. John and Julie Gottman and utilize their work. And I was 24 years old at the time. I'd never had a job working in the kind of the psychology, self-improvement world. And so here I was in a job interview where I was going to be helping married couples improve their marriage and their relationship and their parenting at the age of 24 years old. Like, when I ended up getting hired for the job, I was working with people that had kids my own age or had been married a lot longer than I'd been alive. And so when I was thinking about how to present myself, I knew that in some ways I could be competing with other people that had more time on me, maybe had been married, had more degrees and more accolades than I did. But I knew that I offered something really unique too. By being younger, I was very gung ho to learn about what makes relationships succeed. I was very interested in people's lives. I was very passionate, and that added something. And I believe that's why I ended up getting a job that technically I wasn't really qualified for.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that example because it is exactly what I was speaking to. It's that you uniquely bring a set of strengths and intrinsically who you are, right? And also, I mean, let's say your life experience at that time actually lended you to be someone in that room that had a different perspective and a different ability to listen and relate to people in a way that others wouldn't have in that moment, right? And that's a really beautiful thing in business, right? To be, I mean, that's what we're doing at the end of the day is we're relating to our market, whoever our target market is and our audience is we're learning to be in relationship with them. And we have to be able to do that in a really genuine and caring way so that we understand who they are and what's important to them. And the more that you can see that your perspective and your ability to listen and the way that you can communicate and then make really strategic decisions from that place really is going to come from you. And how you do that is completely different from somebody else and who also may bring value, but also is together going to be collaborative and yet distinctly different.
So I'd love to hear from you how we bring these gifts to the forefront. I have ways that I do that and ways that I support people to do that, but I want to hear it from you. What's the best way to highlight, focus, and leverage those gifts?
I think, I mean, the first thing it may seem somewhat obvious, but it's to really identify what those are, right? Number one, identify what are the strengths that you have in your leadership. And some people say, wow, like, I got to really, first of all, consider that I am a leader. I'm in a leadership role and I need to take that really seriously, right? So what are the things that you do bring to the table? And then how do you spend more of your time in those activities, or how do you start to bring more of your strengths forward? That's where you're productive, that's where you're effective, and that's where you get more results. Not to mention you're going to be more energized, right? You're going to be more engaged in what you're doing. And so that's something that's really, really key and important when you are in a leadership role, and especially if you're working on a leadership team. Okay, so I think that's the first and second thing. And so first identify, and then two, look for how do I bring more of this, right? When we think about how do we work amongst our teams, or even if we have a really small team, is that we need to look at how do we bring our strengths forward and actually bring the best of ourselves and not so much focusing on the things that we're not so great at, right? I mean, we can delegate and hire on other people to do those things. And if we look at the Oprahs of the world or the Ariana Huffingtons of the world, right? They're not spending loads of time doing things that are weakening to them, right? They're spending their time on areas that they're a genius, right? Where they're really strengthened. And that can look very different person to person to person. There's not one way to lead or run a business. And yet you need to identify that and then turn up the volume and really leverage those areas for yourself.
This is really powerful stuff because when we identify those gifts and we really focus on those, it's a game changer. Everything shifts for us. When we are living in our zone of genius and really supporting other people and living in theirs and taking on the things that we're not good at. Because I think as women, especially, that we want to be super women. We want to be able to do everything. And just, I see this a lot. And I'm sure men have this too, but I see this mostly in women where they get the superwoman complex and try to do it all. And then it kind of affects the sense of self because we just can't do it all. It propels us to a state of burnout, and we need other people. So I think the success that you're talking about that women can move into is really stepping into that space where they are in their zone of genius and they are in that place of passion about what they're working on and seen for that rather than trying to be everything to everyone.
That's right. Because that state you're talking about, that do it all mentality, I call it the chief everything officer, right? Because it's like this mentality where you're just spinning and you're doing it all and you're wearing every hat, and probably in your business and your life. I mean, let's be honest, right? That's what starts to happen. And the difference is that most women leaders that I speak to, they're really in this both for passion but also purpose, right? They want their businesses and lives to be a force for good. They want to contribute to something bigger, and they want to create lasting and sustainable change in the world. So in order to do that, you've got to build a support system. You've got to have a high performance team, and you've got to be able to not only lead from your genius, but you have to be able to really be living and leading from that sense of what are my values, right? What's most important to me, and how do I take responsibility, personal responsibility for making sure that happens, both for myself and the people around me. And I think that really comes down to doing business with integrity, right? Because we all want our services and our products to be of integrity in the world. And yet, if we're out of integrity with ourselves as women in leadership, that's the foundation from which we're operating, right? So we have to reel it in, and leadership starts with self, right? So really leading yourself first and looking at what's there and it needs to be tightened up, or what needs to be cross-checked in terms of where are you compromising yourself, and then saying, okay, I need to spend time getting back in integrity with myself, possibly my values, possibly leading more powerfully in my strengths. Maybe I need to have a better connection with my team and be a better team leader, right? So that then I can actually create those results in the world that I know I'm meant to lead, and that big impact that's in the vision.
Oh, this is such great stuff. And one thing that I just want to kind of talk through something with you and see what your experience has been and where your wisdom lies with it, is that what I've found in certain environments where I'm working with a team of men is that, and I can clearly see that my opinions aren't respected, or that my skills are intimidating, and I'm kind of being blown off. So it's hard for me to talk about, but I'm just wondering that one thing that I really struggle with is kind of wanting to demand the respect, right? Versus there's like, I could demand the respect, I could shrink down, and there's another way to do things. There's a different way, rather than demanding the respect or just shrinking away, a balanced way that's going to actually be received by men, rather than asking them for permission for them to receive me, to actually stepping into a new space. And I would love to hear about that space from you.
Yeah, I love this question because it's real on so many levels, right? So we have to talk about it. And I think preparing and practicing, right? Being in the practice of what does this really require of us as women to be ourselves, and yet practice a skill, cultivate a skill when it's called forth in us. So here's what I think. It comes down to a couple things, and I think one, social connection, and two, communication, which they're intertwined and they're connected here, right? So they're not completely separate. But what I mean by social connection is being able to cultivate a relationship with anyone. This could be a peer, this could be a colleague, this could be someone you met once, this could be a prospect, right? This could be an influencer. This could be anyone, frankly. But if you're running into that dynamic, that you have to create a connection wherein you understand the other person's perspective, what they value, and have enough of a awareness of that just as much as you have awareness of yourself and your own feelings, right? Your own sense of self in that moment, right? So to establish true connection with that other human being, that takes a different level of awareness, right? So in that moment where perhaps you're feeling disrespected or small, right? What does it actually take from you as a leader to acknowledge that, have awareness of that, and then make a new conscious choice about what's happening for that other person right now? Who is that other person? What do they value? And this doesn't condone or make right what's happening in the interaction, by the way, right? So I'm not saying that how you have been made to feel is okay. What I'm saying is to expand your awareness of who the other person is in order to start to build a connection with them, right? To find a way to be in relationship with that person that might look different than the one you started out to have. Is this making sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely love what you've shared about women in leadership. It's been so fantastic to be here on the Thriving Launch podcast with Sarah Kaler talking about women leadership. Keep thriving, everyone.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to listen to our next episode where I'm going to dive in and teach you how to create a podcast and really talk to you about logos and what works with podcast covers and how to create a show description that really pops and attracts your ideal client and listener.